I'm going to be short, maybe not so sweet in terms of the presentation. And I suppose the first thing to say is that this link between culture and nature to the Heritage Council as a policy advisory body that was set up, just over 20 years ago, actually comes quite naturally because our legislation gives us responsibility for both cultural heritage and natural heritage. Of course, we're just a policy advisory body to government, and you'll hear from both Kieran and the National Monuments, who are the actual service that delivers what ultimately government provides in terms of a service, in terms of its commitments and its requirements. Sometimes they take our advice, sometimes they don't. But I think there's a consistency of approach now that is driving this link. So from a general point of view, the path that was envisaged, if you like, in terms of the way in which heritage, cultural and natural heritage, are so closely intertwined, has been on the Irish statute book for 20 odd years. And I hope Photius will forgive me, but whenever I first went over to Brussels, when I came back to Ireland, like Yvonne, I was out of Ireland for a long time, and talked to them about a landscape approach. It was into a DG environment and a DG agriculture that sort of scratched their heads. No, don't talk to us about a landscape approach. Talk to us about nature conservation, or talk to us about agriculture. But a landscape approach, they didn't want to know. But there's a big shift. There has been a big shift. And I suppose the most important thing that in my short presentation I want to achieve today is to get us all looking to the future. Of course, from the Heritage Council perspective, or anybody's point of view, we have to understand the past by all means and use the information that we have and that understanding to actually make decisions in which we can act today and, of course, tomorrow. But remember to keep your focus firmly on the future, because the overall objective is to improve the quality of the places where we all live and where we all work, and to improve everyone's sense of well-being as a result. That's bringing people into the core of it, which is something which Photius has also said. Again, confessions, and Yvonne sort of spoke up. So my primary academic discipline was ecology, with a little bit of biology thrown in. And yes, for those that might doubt it, the word ecology did exist in the 1970s. So it comes no surprise to me, really, that I've spent my life, to say nothing of my professional life, actually trying to celebrate the importance of making connections, which is the theme. I didn't choose it, but it's the theme of this whole process. And indeed, championing the importance of networks. And anyone who knows the work of the Heritage Council will see the significance of networking and networks. However, the connections, and here I sort of say what we should be trying to do with our younger generation. The connections, and in particular links between culture and nature, as opposed to cultural heritage and Natura 2000, in my case, extend long before choosing any academic subjects. As with most people, right? They were instilled at a very early age from where I was born and where I was raised. And again, that picture that you had at the end just shows that, getting people to realize the significance of the importance of that at an early stage in their lives is very, very important. Certainly they were instilled in me from where I was born and raised, and the connections between people and place which made my environment alive and fortunately so pleasant to live in. Because effectively, where I was brought up, our house was in the middle of a forest on the edge of a small rural village, occupied for the most part actually at that time by workers in a sawmill, and all of that was part of a significant designed landscape, complete, I have to say, although I didn't realise at the time because I had never any aspirations to live in a castle. It was occupied by a duke and a duchess, and I wasn't going to get very far by trying to be either a duke or a duchess, hence the emphasis on the natural side rather than the cultural side. In our home place, deer roamed, pheasants wandered the fields, bluebells carpeted the woodland floor. And yes, there were some indigenous native species of flora and fauna too. But of course, it took me until about I was 40 years of age to realise the impact that environment had on me, nor did I realise why I was doing what I was doing with my life until I was 40. And I did set an objective when I realised that I was going to try to make others realise at a much earlier stage so that they would work towards trying to influence that. It's little wonder if I didn't realise till I was 40, and I had no plastic spoon, silver spoon in my mouth. It was very plastic. It's little wonder in the intervening years, many of the connections between people and place were lost by society in Europe and beyond as a whole, never mind in my little part of the world. And I suppose my choice of ecology as an academic subject was based on knowledge of the very first Earth Summit in the early 70s. And the publication of a marvellous little book, which if you haven't read, you should go away and read, called Blueprint for Survival. That publication, to go back to what I'm asking you to do today, to look to the future, was looking to the future. And anyone who's read it, can't pretend that they didn't know that we actually were, and in some cases still are, on a path that is causing inestimable harm to both our culture and our nature. But the gift to act on it is here, is with us and everyone else in society. And of course the habitats and the birds directives were a reaction to that, even though it took almost 30 years to bring that to effect. And of course they were brought into effect, and I think Photius has already acknowledged that, and the EU's shift and change, they were introduced for the most part without paying attention to culture, to people. Just think of the rise about our bogs at the moment and you'll understand that. The positive effect of those directives is informed, and there are many more knowledgeable people than myself. In other words, those directives did real good. Indeed, where the hell would we be in Ireland without them? And my only regret is that there wasn't sufficient foresight at the time within the EU to hammer home the need for a landscape directive, a whole-of-landscape approach, one that truly made the connections between nature and culture. The opportunity was there, but we missed it. But it's still there, because at that time in 2000, the Council of Europe had published the European Landscape Convention, and also in 2000, they had driven that as an initiative that really connected culture and nature. Some things take time. Let's be patient. So a lot of good progress, therefore, has been made in the intervening 20 years, but we still face, here I go back into my ecological hat, habitat and species loss. Just ask anyone from the NVDC, ask anyone from National Parks and Wildlife Service, ask anyone from our environmental NGOs, right? Ask any of us who drives in a summer evening and doesn't have to scrape all the insects off the windscreen anymore. The Joe Public realises it as well. And all of this is a dramatic impact on our cultural landscapes, rural, urban, and indeed peri-urban. And we're still all looking to the future with no real focal point to drive us forward. We know we need one, and we know we should be making the connections. And this event, set in the context of the European Year of Cultural Heritage, is a very important step to everyone who's here today, making sure that we do take that step. I'll ask two very simple questions. They sort of complement what Yvonne has asked. Are we leading or are we being led? And do we want to lead or do we want to be led? Yvonne and Photius, they talked about best practice, and there is best practice in Ireland, so we can lead. But we also need not only the practitioners, us here, but our politicians to set that in context and give us the capacity and the resources, and I have to say, the legislation that is fit to do it. Certainly, if you look at what Photius was talking about, the 2017 European Commission publication, which highlighted examples of best practice in the integrated management of natural and cultural assets in Natura sites, the examples should provide much more than simply encouragement to us all to adopt a whole-of-landscape approach, because that report includes promoting an enabling policy framework to expand local capabilities. Ireland, this government, now has a national landscape strategy, but there's no one, because the department is grossly overstretched and underfunded, no one with the dedicated responsibility to drive it and make sure it happens. So we have the landscape framework. The 2017 Brussels report talks about view conservation objectives within a larger landscape context. We have that. We have the framework to do it, but now we need the means and the capacity and the people to actually do it. And of course, fully embrace sustainable development. Our planning acts now can be cited and we can say, yeah, they're fit for purpose, but we still haven't got the frameworks and the structures and the capacity at a national level to actually implement that. My own sense, eternally the optimist, although I've been accused recently of being a pessimist, but no, I'm not. I'm eternally the optimist. in concluding, I have to conclude that there is an opportunity to grasp. And we have to first of all accept that this shouldn't just be about Natura sites. I've been preaching that, so my apologies for a long time. It is not just about Natura sites. The Natura sites fit into a whole landscape. This is about the whole landscape. In Ireland, as I've said, we don't have the appropriate management frameworks or indeed the legislative frameworks to allow us to grasp the opportunity. We should be pushing to secure them. With foresight and further research and collaboration, we can secure this. Certainly from a legislative point of view, and all democracies operate through legislation. And from a general point of view, Ireland at the moment, we haven't got the legislative framework that allows us to deliver what I'm hearing Foti's talk about, what we're looking at in terms of integrating and management. Yeah, we can make a whole lot of people collaborate, but if we want the politicians to buy into this, and we want the resources, and we want the capacity, Heritage Council has had a long-held view that we need a new form of enabling legislation that is focused on conservation and management of where people live, where they work, and that is been couched as a Landscape Ireland Act. That inter alia would facilitate increased public participation, accessibility and the use of local knowledge in landscape management, all of which is what the EU is driving us to do. Maybe the time's right to open that debate before the future is too late. Thanks a lot.